All right, Ms. Wagner, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So I titled this Communication for Young Professionals in the COVID Age. And so y'all are young professionals and we are communicating differently than we normally do. So we're going to look at some written communication, some verbal communication, and then nonverbal communication, especially situations that you guys will find yourselves in this year. And you guys may say, oh, that's all common sense. But I know there are some things that my team expressed last year they just weren't prepared for when they got in some different situations. So I want first, hey, now I didn't know it would all move. I want y'all to pick your favorite go-to text message or direct message, whatever, slang, keep it state officer-ish in the chat box. Go. If you know. And I'm over here reading these going, I have no idea what that means. So I think that's the thing that you guys would want to remember is that you're going to be communicating with people who are chapter advisors a lot, and they don't know what any of that means. So anyway, we're going to move on to the important part. So I did set some objectives. I got to move all the, I've got my screen popped up here where I can look at myself and then I can't see what's on the screen. So we're going to look at electronic communication. Just real quick, some email tips, phone tips, texting tips, and social media, personal conversations. So things that we can include that we might want to talk about, things we might want to not talk about, and then what about when we're in a virtual meeting, and then social considerations. So this is the one that I know students are typically not prepared for. So what is basic dining etiquette? What do I do with the napkin? Where does the place setting be? You know, what's all the forks? And then how we pass food around. So I'm going to admit to y'all that I've only been out of the classroom. This is my second year, starting my second year out of the classroom, and I'm that teacher that's everywhere. So being confined to this screen is a little bit tough, but we're going to make it. So when we talk about email, so when we put written words in a message, that's creating an image of ourselves. Just like when you guys walk up to a group of people, the way you're dressed, the way you look, the way you talk creates an image. And so I want to help y'all present a professional image when you use email. Now, it's common in the South, just like Mr. Lejeune was doing, to use Mr. and Miss when we talk to people, especially combining that with their first name. But in an email, we're going to use a formal greeting. So you might put, Dear Miss Wagner, good morning, Mr. Dice, hello, Miss Chisholm. So Miss, capital MS period, is kind of a catch-all for a female. You don't know maybe if she's married, if she's single, we don't know, not our business, but she's a professional. So when she's a professional, that capital MS period is acceptable. You're also going to want to use somebody's last name, not use their first name unless they've told you that it's okay. Now, like y'all's chapter advisors, you're going to call them whatever you call them, but there are others that you're going to always, I mean, I was in a 2-teacher department. My teaching partner is 15 years younger than me, and I still have to call him Mr. Carroll. I cannot call him by his first name. I just can't do it. But commonly in the South, we're taught that we can use a person's first name as long as we put Mr. or Miss in front of it. And I still would caution you, if you were making that first connection with an advisor, be a little more formal. And a little more formal would mean don't use hey, don't use yo, don't use what's up. Yeah, and we have a time for that, but it's not in that first email to an advisor or someone that you're trying to make a professional connection with. So y'all answer this question for me. Later, both tomorrow evening and Thursday evening, we're going to have a national officer and a past national officer join us. How do we address them? And so it's going to be different because I'm guessing the Louisiana team is much more comfortable with Miss LeBlanc. And it's nothing to them to call her Lainey, where it might be a little more, I'm sure she's going to say, y'all just call me Lainey, but they have that relationship and it's just much more comfortable. As you know, if she were my age, you would probably not want to do that until she said, just call me Lainey. All right. So what about the body of the email? Oh, I didn't take notes on that one. So we want to keep it short and to the point. So an ag teacher would tell you that they get 1,000 emails from state staff every day. They don't, but they do get a lot of emails. Think about principals and parents and from the State Department. So keep it short and to the point. Be clear in what you need from them. So one example might be, Dear Mr. Cornelius, I wanted to follow up regarding our state officer visit later this week. This is the time that I intend to be there. Just wanted to verify that this would work. So what about sentence font? So always remember that when you use all caps, it's like you're yelling. And use those exclamation points once. And so you can see, do you like it when I yell? So it helps with that professional image. The other thing, so we were laughing about your slang words that I don't know. What if you send an advisor this? This isn't Facebook and I don't know what you're saying. You know, you've just lost all of your credibility. And then always remember to be polite. Even if you don't know what you're doing and don't know what you're talking about, if you're polite, they are super willing to help you. All right, now what about at the end of your email? It's always appropriate to use some type of closing remark. I'm that person that puts thanks and my name. Thank you, sincerely, best regards, that those work. What about your name? So you would put your full name. I don't know how many Haleys there are, just because you're like the second person below me on the screen. But we have just in this group 2 Calebs. Well, which one? Which one are we talking about? So that helps us, an advisor, know exactly who. And then you can also include your title and your contact information, because they may not actually have the best way to contact you. And I don't know what the different states' rules are for phone numbers and email, but if you're not comfortable passing out your telephone number, don't. They'll contact you via email. And so that's probably the most professional written communication you can use at this point, if you're not going to write out a real letter, is to use email. Oh, I missed. And if you put a logo on there, so like my signature at work, I have to use a specific logo. And so state staff members will all have a specific logo. And then that's a good place to put an FFA emblem, or if your state does a specific logo for FFA. just kind of a branding for you. So if you guys were going to call a teacher to set up a visit, what would you say? Does anybody want to share what you would say?
I'm not very good at talking on the phone, but I know that you start with the pleasantries per usual, and then, well, it depends on who initiated the setting up of the visit, I guess. I'm stumped.
I would probably start with, like, good morning, good afternoon, Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so. Then how are you doing? All that good stuff. And then go into, like, I guess, why I called them.
Anybody else? Alabama, anybody want to play?
I got you.
Okay, come on.
Okay, let's use you as an example. Okay.
All right.
Hi, Ms. Jill. My name is Kennedy Clark. I'm a Mississippi FFA State Officer, and I was wondering if you had the time to be able to set up a meeting with our State Officer team.
Good job.
You gotta be to the point, straightforward, but respectful.
Right. So a lot of things that we don't think about with talking to chapter advisors is that a lot of times they use their cell phones, but they can't use them during the daytime. They can't have them out during class. And that's a school by school issue. Some they don't care, they're going to answer it. Some are very strict. So you want to think about that. If they give you a school number, use it. Use that one first. To me, that's more professional. My cell phones are personal. That's my space. And then, what is their job? Their job is to teach and to coach teams and to be out, doing all their visits. So we have to think about when they're in class. If we don't get them, well, why not? They're probably in class. Hey, Lee, do you have a question? I just saw that your hand was raised.
Yes. So my solution that I use, because I do often find myself texting either my advisors or another advisor here recently, or even another teacher in another subject, because the way we have COVID, sometimes we're doing a hybrid. Some classes are online, you do some online work. Anyway, I always, if I don't know if I can talk to them directly, I'll type out a text message similar to an email saying, good afternoon, I'll use my advisor, Miss Jacobs. Can you give me a call whenever you get a chance? I have a question. And that's something that I found to be really effective because you're not impeding on their time. Whenever they get a chance, they'll give you a shout out.
That fits perfectly with the next point. Katie, you have a question? See yours.
I was just giving them good answer.
Oh,
yeah. Little encouragement.
And so, yeah, with COVID, it's crazy. Y'all are doing schoolwork at all hours of the day and night, and your teachers are too, because there are people they're emailing and texting at all hours of the day and night. But so I don't even know if the Mississippi team knows. I think I've shared it, that I carry 2 cell phones because that allows me to turn off my work time and really focus on personal time. My work was really getting in my home time. And so, like Lee said, if you want to be respectful of their personal time, you can say, hey, give me a call at your convenience. And consider that, a lot of them have children and they have stuff going on after school, and they're more willing to help if we're all respectful of that time. If we use the school phone numbers, a lot of times we're going to have to leave a message. So be prepared. Have it, like Lee said, he types it out. He's ready to give that message if the answering machine picks up or someone in the office picks up. Be sure and leave your number. And I have found that if a teacher will tell me the best time to call, that's when I'm going to call, because I want to call when it's convenient for them. And then the last one is have your notepad, a pen, and your calendar ready, because, you know, if they're setting up a visit of some sort, you got your calendar and you can see when you're open. Let's talk just a second about texting, though. So we talked about, Lee shared sometimes that he would use it. I try to only use it with an established relationship. Now, there are times that a teacher is going to say, you need to text me. And I'm sure they have a process set up for managing all of that. But sorry, I didn't pop it up there. So, you know, texting your own chapter advisor is going to be different than texting one you've never met. Same with your state staff. You know, you're going to treat it a little differently. And so, yeah, be considerate of time. Those midnight messages, put it in an email. And the other thing, so this is what I tell my teachers all the time. If you send me a text after hours to this phone, and there's none on here, they have not sent me any, I may not check it till the next morning, but once I check it, it's gone. I will never remember what they asked me for. And so I tend to think of things and email it, you know, if it's 9 o'clock at night. And then the next day I can say via text, hey, did you get my email regarding such and such? And then, because there are teachers that only check their email at 7 a.m. and that will point them back to whatever it was I was asking for. So that's one way to be considerate of their time. Back to Lee, you know, make sure this is what I need. Give me a call when you're available. Don't use any slang, and don't make it a rambling message. Because remember, I don't know what all that stuff meant because I'm old. What about if there's going to be a series of questions based on how they answer? Do y'all do that? Y'all do that with your parents, don't you? Can I go to the mall? And one of your parents replies with, who are you going with? And you tell them, and then they say, well, how are you getting there? And you tell them, and they say, well, what are you going to do there? And then you tell them, and they say, well, when are you going to be home? Oh, my goodness, you could have just called them because you knew they were going to have all those questions. And so I'm a thinker. Think through what you need from that person, and a call might actually be easier. I mean, that's when you say, hey, if you have a minute, please call me. Or is there a time that we can talk on the phone so that you can get all the answers to your questions? And there's that. So I have advisors all the time who they'll tell a state officer, be sure and text me when you get home if they're leaving, you know, at 9 o'clock at night or something like that. So if we need an immediate communication and don't necessarily want to tie up a lot of time, just send an immediate text. And then what about if you're done for the night, but the person just keeps on texting? And that's when you can say, thanks so much. Let's follow up tomorrow. Do you guys find that sometimes you just need to stop texting and you don't know how? Let's follow up tomorrow. And that usually helps people understand that it's time to stop. Or you can just lay it down and not ever come back to it. That's what I do. And I know, so I'm a text message person. I'm not a instant message on social media person, but it all kind of fits in the same way. Because I know some of you guys, you know, your mode of communication is Snapchat. So when you're tired of snapping, what do? Catch you tomorrow. Or you just lay it down. All right, so what about one day we're not going to have to sit in front of the computer and do this? Oh, nice. I don't know if y'all can see the chat box, but it says you leave them on red. Yeah. I have a 16-year-old son, 17-year-old son that occasionally gets in trouble with his phone, and I'll go through his messages and leave them on red, and then all the girls are mad. You left me on red. He's like, my mom did it. But one day we're going to all be back to meeting in person, and it seems like, we get to something like the State Officer Summit or even National Convention. We go to all kinds of events, and at National FFA, my mom left you on red. She did. At National FFA, they are really good at taking a group of state officers and splitting them out to 6 different tables. And so you sit by people that you've never met before. I don't know if that makes y'all uncomfortable. Raise your hand if it makes you uncomfortable. Makes me uncomfortable. So what do I talk about with these people? And so they actually use prompts. They'll put them on a screen and give you something to kind of guide the conversation. And I love that because it means I don't have to think about it because I'm not a conversationalist. It's always good to talk about your FFA experience. What if you're with a member though? Draw them in to talk about their FFA experience. Let them talk about their SAE, or you talk about your SAE project. You can always talk about the issues facing agriculture, but do any of y'all get fired up talking about, let's see, GMOs? Does anybody get fired up? Anybody get fired up talking about organic versus conventional farming? Right here. I didn't share that I live on a farm. My husband and I raised 2 sons, and we live on a farm. And so we get fired up about agricultural issues. And so we want to be sure that when we take on an agricultural issue as a topic of conversation, that we can remain calm and cool-headed and not get, I had one of our junior state officers, that was her word, those were her words of advice. When it's going to be something that makes me real pushy and assertive about what I believe, I try to step back and talk about something else. Katie, did you want to share?
I get really passionate and rambly when I talk about the importance of agriculture education. Like, I'll just be rambling on for 30 minutes to my friends that they know nothing about agriculture. And I'm just like, nah, 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 nah. And they're like, okay, stop.
Yeah. So what things should we avoid? So we want to take care, again, with those controversial topics. And I'm not going to say, there's a time where we should talk about things that are hard to talk about, but we have to be careful with them. We don't want to talk about off-color things, crude jokes. And then I'm sure y'all would never do this. Stand in a group, you and your state officer cohorts, and complain. And so when you then have members or even adults walk up around you, what do they hear? So be careful to use positivity in your personal conversation. So what about virtual meetings? A lot of times we are time limited, and I feel like the race is on. You're focused on a topic, and we're trying to get something accomplished in, typically it's an hour. And so just keep that in the back of your mind as you're working with a team to do conversation in the new way that we have to communicate right now. All right. And I was thinking about, we really have a lot of conversations. I spend, seems like my whole day on Zoom communicating. So we are going to do then some basic dining etiquette. This will wrap us up. We've got about 4 more slides. So who needs basic dining etiquette? Professionals and student leaders. What's it for? So it's just kind of rules for, oh, what did I do? Rules for professional behavior. We use it a lot of times in dining situations. That's where National FFA is going to put you in a situation. And then there are some state level events where you'll have that. Even chapter banquets where you're going to be needing this type of information. And it just helps us present our best professional image. And I'll tell y'all, there are days I don't get it right because it's hard. It's really hard to know what to do. All right, so there are a few things though that are pretty standard for how we would operate. So this was one of the things that I always taught in my classroom. It was Miss Wagner's top 10 ways to not be an ogre. And we tied it into the dining scene with Shrek, and it was a lot of fun. But we don't have time for that. So couple things. What about that napkin? We walk up and there's all this fancy stuff. We sit down. So the napkin is the first thing that we move. It goes in our lap upon being seated. It's usually going to be right in front of us or to the right of our place setting. We use it to wipe our fingers. We don't wipe them on our official dress pants. My kids do, but you know, y'all don't. We can use it to wipe our mouth. What about you suddenly have a piece of gristle? You can take your napkin and put it in there. And just kind of fold it up and put it back in your lap. So if you're going to leave a table, you lay that napkin in your chair. That means you're coming back. And my students used to always give me a hard time about that, but that's what's proper, I promise. And then when you're done and you're leaving, you tuck that napkin under the edge of your plate. And so I would always take my fancy dishes and my silky, satiny cloth napkins to school to teach this. And I don't know if some of y'all work in restaurants, you shared that tonight. If you've ever had a paper napkin stuck to a plate in a restaurant, you know how gross that is. You have to stick it in the dishwater to get it off, and it's really gross. But I would tell those young people with my fancy napkins that the gravy causes a grease stain. And if they would put a grease stain on my napkin, I was going to be upset with them. And that just helped them remember that don't put it in the plate. And you're going to see people that do that. But I promise from accepted rules, put it beside it. Just so that's a few quick things. What if
Ms.
you walk
Wagner,
into the...
I do have a question.
What's that?
Is it improper to put the corner edge of your napkin into your collar so that you don't get food on your jacket?
Yes, it is improper.
Because whenever I was a little kid, my mom used to tell me that whenever she was a really little girl, she took cotillion, and she would get on to me really bad and pop me in the middle of restaurants for putting a napkin in my collar because my dad did it, so I followed what he did, and for elbows on the table.
Yes. So I'll share that in England, women will wear bibs over their evening dresses. I swear, you cannot make that up. My mother-in-law was a home ec teacher, and that's something that she shared after a cruise. And she sat with a woman from England, and she wore a bib. And, you know, in America, we don't do that. We just have to be careful. Katie, you have a question?
Not really question, but a comment kind of bouncing off of what Wyatt said. I cannot stand when somebody eats with their elbows on the table because I am 5'2", and these tall people I'm used to being around sit with their elbows on the table and just don't give me any room. So, like, it's really not fun. And I will quickly correct someone on eating with their elbows on the table.
And that's not something that I added tonight, but that is something that we want to be conscious of, because it's not uncommon to end up with 2 corporate sponsors and 6 or 8 state FFA officers at a table. And then, you know, here's me, you know, with my elbows on the table. So that is something to consider. But what if you guys walked up to this table set like the one on the screen? Is anybody overwhelmed? Raise your hand.
If
Oh my
it looks
God.
that fancy, I'm just not going to order because I'm too afraid to mess up the plates.
No, it's not that hard, Wyatt. It's not. So I do want to share just real quick about the place setting. So this is typically what you're going to have. You guys are not going to get a wine, but probably depends on where you are. So you're going to work from the outside in. So that salad fork, when do we usually eat the salad first? And then work into whatever's closest to the plate. Gotta move my thing. So you'll also notice that, like, if you're gonna have soup, you're probably not gonna have as many forks. So what you eat will be, your utensils will be dictated by what you're gonna eat. And so when we get to an event, especially those like at National FFA, you're going to have a combination of informal and formal. So when you pop that second one up there, it's, oh my word, why do we need all those dishes? I'm with Wyatt. I'm just not going to get anything. Just bring me a glass of water. That's all I can handle. But
No, the water's probably in a crystal glass too, so they can keep that. I'll just sit there and be pretty.
it's not as hard as you guys would think it is. So you go back to the outside. We're going to put our napkin on our lap, start with that salad fork. Typically, you're going to have one or two, iced tea and water. And then you'll have your bread and butter plate, which is to the left at the top above your forks. I always would teach my students the proper way to do it, not the way we always do it in the South, because we like biscuits, but the proper way is to put a piece of bread on there, get some butter, put it on the edge of the plate, tear off a piece of bread, butter one bite at a time. But, you know, biscuits, you can't do that. Dessert is dictated by whether there's a spoon or a fork up there. You know, if it's a fork, you're going to have cheesecake or pie or some kind of cake. But if it's a spoon, you're going to have chocolate mousse or ice cream. Drinks are going to be to the right. Easy if you're right-handed. Now, I probably have some left-handed people, but drinks will be to your right. And then that coffee cup will be almost on the edge of the table sometimes. Like if you move too fast, you'll knock it off. And you usually would turn it over so the top is, the opening is up, and that's the indicator that Kennedy's just bringing her cheese balls. The indicator that you would like coffee. So it's a very unnerving situation. And I'll share with y'all that I've been using this type knowledge since I was the same age as you guys. I traveled the country with 4-H and FFA and used it everywhere. So if you don't know what to do, watch the adult. Even if they don't do it right, you haven't done something glaringly wrong in their eyes. You didn't draw attention to yourself. And that's probably the key. Professional behavior would be not drawing attention to ourselves in this type of situation. Now, yeah, if we said, I have, sat down and I don't really have any idea and I'm just going to do this, that draws attention to you. We want to not do that. Oh, Katie says we're having a dinner party at the FFA Center.
So I am right-handed, but this is just a question, is if the glass is situated on the right and you're left-handed, how would you go to reach for your glass? Because I know that it's improper to reach over your food.
You just have to do it. And I live with a left-handed person. You just got to you're actually going to reach with your right hand. You can get a drink with your right hand. So last thing, I'm always a little uncomfortable because we sit at, like National FFA Convention, they'll have the state officers and corporate sponsors and state staff at these great big round tables and all this stuff in the middle of the table. We have to pass it around, right? So they'll put the salad dressing and the rolls and the butter, the lemon for your tea, sweeteners, cream, salt and pepper, all kinds of stuff in the middle of the table. And my arms are just not long enough to reach it. And you guys have an official dress. And then you want to get over into that. And it's so challenging sometimes. But that's what we do. We're going to reach over. The closest person will get the item and pass it to the right. I don't want any salt and pepper. That's okay. You just keep passing until the last person either gets it or we run out. Sometimes if there's two of the same item, it gets halfway around the table. But whenever it gets back to the original spot, you just put it back in the middle. So how many of y'all are ready for a dinner party? Awesome. And so I think this is not, we don't use etiquette a whole lot. Y'all are in dorms and apartments and living at home, and, whatever you do at your house in your space is good. That's what you're comfortable with. And so it makes it a little more challenging when we are in these situations and you have to think about, oh my gosh, what do I do? But just watch somebody and stop and think, hey, we went through this. And so I think we have like 2 minutes for questions, if anybody has a question.
I have one because I made this mistake at Indy last year and I had no clue what to do. We went to a place called the Spaghetti Factory in downtown Indianapolis, and it's a nice restaurant, and the tables halfway like that, like they're a little more lenient. But when I walked through the door and sat down, the lady that greeted us told me, and I quote, "That's a big no-no." I walked in with a cowboy hat on, and I know you don't wear a hat at the table, but in a nice restaurant like that, where do you put it?
Yeah, where do you put it, Wyatt? Because it's been a long time since I've traveled with a man in a cowboy hat. So
the lady there, luckily there wasn't many people there, but she had me put it on the table behind us, which made me feel really awkward and rude the whole time. And Mr. Huffman told me to hang it on the back of the chair, but there wasn't any way to hang it on the back of the chair because the chair was round. And then one of the waiters said, well, you can put it under your chair, but the cowboy hat was too big for the legs of the chair. So I was totally confused.
And so that is really probably a good point, Wyatt. There's a lot of places that if you're going to need business etiquette, you're not going to wear your hat. And especially, so he's talking about a casual event, a casual part of National FFA Convention. If we were all in official dress, we're not going to have it anyway. And unless you, I would say, move to Texas or Oklahoma, Kansas, there are lots of places where you might not take your cowboy hat with you. So, all right.
With your hands and arms when you're not eating.
Put them in your lap.
I feel really awkward doing that. Is my little clasp and set it on the table okay?
I do that. I just put it on the table, no elbows. So
I got at a second nice restaurant in Indianapolis. I was, we'll say, scolded by a lady because just common Southern courtesy, chivalry, is whenever this lady went to sit down, I stepped over and pulled her chair back for her and kind of held a hand there you go, the chair is available, And that's just the thing I've always been taught is to pull a lady's chair back and push her chair in for her. And up there, they are not the same as we are down here. And when I pulled her chair back, you would have thought that I asked her for a wallet. She was heated.
all right. Do we have any last questions from any of the other teams? Oh, they love a gentleman, Wyatt. That's sweet. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over
I'm from your team, but I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I know when I'm being like respectful, I like to hold the door open for people. But some people see that as rude because I'm female and I shouldn't be holding the door. What should I do? Because I mean,
It's hard, Kennedy, because I'm a door holder too. But and so as women, especially in the South, there's a point where we have to let people do things for us. I like to hold the door. I like to open the door and hold it for other people. But there'll be a point in your life where you have to say, you just say, thank you, and just go ahead in. That's all you can do.
What if it makes it insanely uncomfortable when someone holds the door open for me over my head? Because that has happened before.
You just got to go with it. All right,
But
guys.
Like at some point, whenever we step out of the South, there's just times whenever you need to kind of take the tongue lashing, because I had a teacher that was, not to be rude at all, but she was a very, very extremist feminist. And she yelled at me for talking about opening a door for a woman. And if you ever asked her if she needed help, she could be walking down the hallway with 150 pounds of paper. And if you asked if she needed help, she would get mad enough to set her stuff down and yell at you because she says that it seems like you're making a woman seem incapable. And I said it was chivalrous. And she goes, chivalry isn't a thing. It's a made-up thing for dominant men. And I got yelled at about that for just trying to be nice.
So, yeah, as we wrap up, I would say that be conscious of where you are. And, you know, you can adapt. Sorry. My mom left you on red kid is over here on the floor behind me, harassing me. But yeah, my mom left you on red when I take your phone.
Just tell him to go eat a hot dog.
That's right. But anyway, you know, just being conscious of where you are. Being polite is not ever a bad thing, but you know, you're going to encounter people who are not as graceful and gracious as we've all been trained to be. Not even trained. It's just how we are. It's how we're raised and how, you know, how we do things. And I encourage you to, you know, just when you encounter those people, don't let them bother you, because doing the right thing and being kind is always the right thing. So thanks for your attention tonight, y'all. I've had fun. I missed my classroom, and so that was just a little bit of what I'm used to, and I appreciate it.